Today's lectures, the topic of my lecture is Gandhi, Ambedkar and Pune Pact 1932. As the struggle between nationalism and imperialism gathered momentum within India in the first half of the 20th century, the social cleavages which characterized the subcontinent, cleavages of religion, of community, and of class, become the matter of serious concern to the participation in this grand confrontation. British statesmen who framed imperial policy and British civil servants who presided over its implementation spent considerable time in the locating these cleavages and in the drawing them into the constitutional reform which they divided in the response to the growing sentiment of nationalism. As against this, the leaders of the nationalist movement attempt to highlight historically as well contemporaneously the overreaching solidarities within India, which held together different constituents of society and offered the basis of nationhood to a civilization which was as complex in its social configuration as it was monumental in its demographic proportions. The differences between the several religious communities of India have, for reasons which are obvious, been matter of very considerable historiographical debate over the past few decades. Such differences spring into bold relief and moment who explore the texture of consciousness and structure of identity within Indian society, and they constitute the motivators of social loyalty and political action in communities whose outlook is molded substantially by elite or populist religious beliefs. So far as the British government was concerned, these differences form the essential ingredient of constitutions which is devised for the governance of India. Constitutions which sought to appease growing nationalist sentiment, though they allocating new resources of power to the colonial society. However, for the nationalist leader prominent among the Mahatma Gandhi, these very cleavages pose the challenges to the surmounted before the transformation of a civilization of antiquity into the modern nation was achieved. With respect to the Muslim, historians have focused upon the Gandhi inability to integrate this community within the framework of Indian nationalism as the greatest failure at the Hindu Muslim divided was not the only one which the Mahatma had reckoned as the leader of the nationalist movement. Embracing the entire subcontinent within Hindu society, there were a number of social divisions which threatened to erupt into the open. The certain critical junctures with consequences that could be distress disasters for the cultural political unity of the subcontinent. None of these cleavages held the dangerous possibilities which were presented by the divide between the caste Hindus on one hand and the untouchable communities which stood outside the system of Varna on the other. 8. If Gandhi failed in healing the cleavages between Hinduism and Islam within the subcontinent, he was remarkably successful in the preventing the emergence of the fatal divide between the caste Hindus and untouchable communities. Religions between these two constituents of Hindu society came to the head during the constitutional deliberations of 1932, not wholly without the gentle prodding from the British government, and it took a fast unto death by the Mahatma to heal a breach pregnant within the most disastrous possibilities. In this essay, I propose the explore that constitutional crisis which obliged the Mahatma to embark upon the fast unto death in September 1932 was not what was Gandhi's vision of Hindu society, and how did he seek to ameliorate the condition of untouchable members. How did the leaders of the untouchables react to the centuries of humiliations which Hinduism had heaped upon their followers? In what manner did the British government prepare the ground for the battle royal between the caste Hindu on the other hand and the untouchable communities on the other? During the course of deliberations leading to the Constitutional Act of 1935, what was the manner in which Gandhi met this challenge, and what were the resources of moral persuasion and political power which were available to him at the juncture? How was the agreement brought about between the two constituents of Hinduism under consideration? And finally, what was the impact of this agreement upon relations between the caste Hindus and untouchables, as well as upon the place which the untouchable occupied within the world of Hinduism? These are some of the questions on which I shall seek to answer in the rest of the essay. To appreciate Gandhi's perception of Hindu society and of the social division within Hinduism, it is necessary to commence with the brief review of the political activity in South Africa during the decade and a half in which it was founded the Natal Indian Congress and developed Satyagraha as an ideology and the mode of political action. The Indian community with which Mahatma Gandhi dealt in South Africa was a typical of the indigenous society within the subcontinent of India. Gandhi had been invited to South Africa on legal business by Gujarati Muslim merchant who formed a part of a mercantile class which had established itself with the consequences success of the South Africa. 8. The majority of Indians in South Africa were drawn from the lowly rural proletariat of the presidency of Madras, and they provided labor from the farms of plantation owned by the British and the Boers, mainly the latter. In the countryside, Gandhi achievement lays in forging these two distinctive constituents of Indian society into the formidable forces through the ideological weapon of satyagraha and through the party which is conjured into existence. The success with which he handled the Africa situation is admirably reflected in the sentiment voiced by the General Smuts, his advisory within the South African government, when he learned that the Mahatma was on his way to India in 1915. The scent has left our shores, observed Smuts. I sincerely hope for the year. Despite the limited range of the Indian community in South Africa, which Gandhi shaped into the cohesive political forces, he became fully conscious at this juncture of the social divisions which had plagued Hinduism since time immemorial. As the social reformer, Gandhi was comparable to distinguished co-religionists like Bankim Chand Chatterjee and Swami Vivekananda, who devoted their lives to their moral material transformation of Hinduism. Both Bankim and Vivekananda recognized caste as a social institution which stood in the way of revitalization of Hindu society and its ability to effectively face the Western challenges. Both these reforms and Gandhi shared their view, realized that prior to 19th century, Hinduism was innocent of any notion like Ummah in Islam or the community in Christianity, which could form the basis of cohesive social formation geared to purposeful spiritual activities and secular endeavor, where they attempt to stimulate within the Hindu society a sense of community comparable to the sense of community within Islam and Christianity. For such consciousness to strike root, the division of Hindu society into caste and subcaste had to yield an entirely new social configuration in which the differentiate constituents of Hinduism had been transformed into homogenized social masses both in their writings and in their speeches. Therefore, reformers like Bankim, Vivekanand, and Gandhi spoke repeatedly of the necessity of cohesive Hindu social order, just as they attacked those distinctions of caste and sects within the Hinduism which undermined its capacity to act as a unified social entity. Perhaps the transformation which Gandhi sought to bring about in Hindu society was first tried out by him in the ashram of the banks of Sabarmati near Ahmedabad, sensing the schism between the caste Hindu and the untouchable as the most fatal schism within the Hindu society. Gandhi tried to introduce between the social community of Sabarmati ashram untouchable who were to live with their ashramites on the term of equality and dignity. This revolutionary attempt at the turning the Hindu word upside down, Hindu word upside down, within the microcosm of the ashram, revealed to the Mahatma the full force of orthodoxy within Hinduism. Even this devoted wife, Kasturba, who had thus far accepted this moral and social experimentation without demur, protested vehemently at the prospect of having to tolerate within the ashram as free and equal members, individuals drawn from untouchable caste. Gandhi views on the caste and the social configurations of Hinduism underwent the substantial change around this period. As he organized populist agitations of elemental power in Champaran or the Kheda or within the country as whole, he became actually conscious on the one hand on the indissoluble link which tied the untouchable to the caste Hindus in the relation of subordination and superordination, and on the other of the necessity of the indirect rather than the district attack upon the caste. If success was to be achieved in any movement of social reform at this juncture, therefore Gandhi commenced speaking of a distinction between the Varnashram Dharma as a prescriptive value and caste as the exceptional reality. The former, so the Mahatma urged, was a philosophical idea of classical origin which legitimized differential modes of economic activity in order to facilitate the cycle of productivity necessity to maintain the social order. There was nothing exploitation about the Varna system as it was conceived, nor did this system allocated to different caste positions of superiority or inferiority within the framework of Hindu society, as against the classical theory of Varn organization. Caste as a existential reality reflected the degeneration of Hindu society over the centuries. This fall from the morally unacceptable states had to be reversed if Hinduism was the reign. Its creative capacity in the 20th century, as the Mahatma observed. When we have cleansed ourselves, we may have the four work according to the way in which we invest one with higher responsibility and duties. Those who will impart knowledge in the spirit of service will be called Brahmans. They will assume no superior heirs but will be true servants of the society. When inequality of status or rights is indeed, every one of us will be equal. Fight by all means the monster that possesses the Varnashram today, that you will find a working side by side with you. My Varnashram accommodates many Pancham families within whom dine with the greatest pleasure. to dine with both their head before the greatest potentate on the earth. But my varnashram compels me to bow down my head in all humility before knowledge, before purity, before every person, where I see God face to face. Gandhi. Such a social vision enabled to Mahatma to face the British government of India with very considerable confidence in the demands he put forth on behalf of Hindu society as a whole, not excluding the untouchables for Swaraj. It was not as if there were no social divisions within Hindu society. It caste as it existed contemporaneously represented the vulgarization of social institutions which had been created in the remote past to meet the requirements of the agricultural civilization, possessed of considerable moral stature and the material creativity. Nevertheless, the relationship between the caste Hindu and the untouchable was a very basic relationship within Hindu society, the erosion of which would cause the Hindu social order disintegrate into chaos. It was the responsibility of morally sensitive Hindu to rectify the shortcomings of caste society and to face the 20th century within the vitality of their community fully restored. Yet any attempt from without the transforming the position of the untouchables within the Hindus and doomed to failure, and it would cost as much social agony to the untouchables as it would cause to the caste Hindus. Gandhi's perception of Hindu society and his prescriptions for the reform stood wholly at the variance within those of B.R. Ambedkar, the most distinguished thinker and political activist thrown up by untouchable in 20th century. Here it is appropriate to spell, but in very brief, a life sketch of Ambedkar in order to appreciate his outlook as well as his opposition to the strategy of transforming Hindu society advocated by Mahatma Gandhi. Ambedkar was born in the Mahar community of Western India, which community, although untouchable in status, held position of some importance in rural society in Maharashtra. His father had achieved the rank of a non-commissioned officer in the Indian Army, so that Ambedkar belonged to the family of some substance and a community of some standing, notwithstanding the lowliness of his position in the scale of caste. Equally important was the fact that Ambedkar possessed an intellect with combined brilliance of incisiveness, in the finely balanced proportions. He was also fortunate in being supported by the princely ruler Baroda for the student of Columbia University in the USA, and therefore he spent some time in the London School of Economics. Though Ambedkar formally studied law and economics, he had the broad interest in politics and sociology. This enabled him to arrive at sensitive understanding and the place occupied by untouchables within Hinduism and the social action which would ensure their uplift within the framework of Indian society. Although Ambedkar occupied the position of Professor of Economics at one of the premier educational institutions in Bombay, he was also very active in public life with the specific objective to promoting the welfare of his caste followers. To this end, and started an organization called the Bahiskrit Hitkarani Sabha, and well as a frontingly paper entitled the Bahiskrit Bharat. Beside the Ambedkar also conducted some agitations in Maharashtra having and their objective the removal of the indignity suffered by the Mahars and their untouchables. Ambedkar directed his formidable intellectual power to the critical understanding of the social structure of Hindu society, within the objective of the utilizing their understanding of the purpose of social reform in political action. In the essay entitled Caste in India, Ambedkar put their untouchable as well as caste Hindu, one of the most perceptive critics of Hindu society. The basic characteristics of Hindu society, so Ambedkar argued, was that castes were not distinct entities by themselves, like social groups defined by terms like class and tribes. Caste constituted the organic constitutions of larger whole, wherein the relations of superiority and inferiority between the different units were controlled by those who occupied the apex of the society, namely the upper caste, and who had over the centuries succeeded the generating the culture and dominance which obliged the inferior caste to accept their lowly position no less readily than the superior caste accepted their superior status, although ostensibly such a social hierarchy drew sustenances from the philosophical framework of Brahmanical Hinduism. In reality, the various castes and subcastes have come into being through very different social process. Some of the castes originated as tribal social reformation. Others were created through the migration of intermarriage, where yet again owed their genesis to the rise of new sectarian movement. At whatever be their origin, the various castes and subcastes look upon themselves as the primary constituents of Hindu society, and the social consciousness of their members was restricted to this spatial distribution of their followers. The bedrock of the Hindu social order was provided by the rules of the matrimony and kinship, and these rules, remarkable for their sharpness of definitions, and enable caste society to survive with its basic future unlettered over the 2 millennia.